Our next panel is a selection of very experienced individuals between investors and entrepreneurs innovating in the area of cybersecurity. This conversation is going to be led by Alberto Gomez, who's our own managing partner and founder at Adara Ventures, and leads a lot of our cybersecurity investments. We also have Julio Casal. We're thrilled to have him back again. Julio is a local legend, to be fair. And a Spanish entrepreneur now based in Silicon Valley. He's founder of Alien Vault and actually had a huge successful exit this summer. He can tell you a little bit more about later. But he's also founder and CTO at 4IQ, which is a big data platform for identity threat intelligence. We also have Veen Lingathoti, is that right? Lingathoti, who's head of Cisco Investments in Europe and leading their cybersecurity investments. We also have Alex Dahl, who's over from 1011 Ventures based out of Silicon Valley, one of the first firms in the world exclusively dedicated to cybersecurity investments, with a pretty impressive portfolio there. And also Pedro Castillo, another local legend based out of Madrid but operating across the US, with Devo, which is a really impressive company coming out of Spain. It's a data operations platform. They've already raised over $70 million and backed by the likes of Insight Venture Partners. So without further ado, please give them a warm welcome to the stage. Thanks, everyone.
Well, good morning. Thank you all for being here. Let me, now that we've all been introduced, get right into the topic. So we're going to talk about intelligence in cybersecurity. So this is an area, it's a huge buzzword, AI nowadays, and in a sense, it may generate a lot of hopes into what artificial intelligence can do to improve defenses, but it also can be a false sense of security because it's not infallible, and the AI is also available to the bad guys. So let me first ask the two investors in the panel, Alex and Vin, from their broader perspective of companies in which they invest. Do you think, what do you think about the expectations? Do you think AI is indeed sort of delivering better solutions in the market?
Yeah, I think the easy answer to that is yes, for sure. It's probably from the marketing or promotional side a little bit overhyped, of course. And I think in the context of are the bad guys also leveraging the tools? That's sort of, if you zoom out a little bit, that's the history of security. It's a game of ladders. The good guys, we find new technologies. You can look back at sort of a recent one, sandboxing and sort of lots of forms of malware came out and sort of were, it was very effective to use things like FireEye or malware detonation zones or sandboxing. And then a lot of malware came out that was resistant to that new approach, right? As the bad guys sort of figured out how to get around it. We will certainly see the bad guys use AI and the technology in the same way they've used all other technologies the good guys have used. So in that way, nothing's really new in security. But absolutely, AI is making a major difference. There's just things that, with the scope of data we can collect, and AI, if you want to look at an evolutionary view of what AI is, it's really just a logical extension of what we're doing with data, big data, linear correlation. And there's lots of use cases. We're an investor in a company called Cylance that's done a much better job of detecting malware by using AI than human beings could ever do. So there's many cases where it is working.
How about from your end?
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely. Agree with what Alex mentioned. I think the biggest challenge you have these days when you think about security, at least from a Cisco's perspective, is the amount of data you have available. And how do you actually correlate all of this data and derive insights? I think that's where AI makes a huge difference. So from our standpoint, at least the time I've spent here in Europe, we've invested in a couple of companies specifically leveraging AI to deliver better solutions. BehaviorSec is one of those companies based out of Stockholm. They're actually leveraging AI to track human cognitive behavior as part of the authentication process. Without leveraging AI, I think it's going to be a very complex problem to solve for. So basically what they do is think about tracking the cognitive footprint of a user as they're going through their journey, when they're online, either on your mobile device or on your desktop. And essentially, the next time when the same person logs in, or if somebody tries to breach, matching that, and then basically saying, well, the behavioral pattern of this person is very different than the other one. So I think there, it makes a huge difference. We are investing in another company called Panacea, also looking at a huge chunk of data internally within the internal infrastructure of an enterprise, and basically deriving insights from them. So basically solving for the finding the needle in the haystack problem. There, I think using AI actually is the way to go. Otherwise, there's no way you can actually find that particular vulnerability where you have to focus your attention on.
Okay. We're also fortunate to have the founders of a couple of companies that are also having particular use cases and applications of AI as to what they do. In the case of, for example, to start with 4IQ, in the area of attribution, basically, finding out who is the one that is attacking you. What have you seen, Julio, as the use cases that for AI that you are seeing at 4IQ in your business?
Well, yes. So this, of course, this the double use case for AI, as we always speak, which is the good AI and the bad AI. And so this new science of identity intelligence, which is leveraging billions of exposures of identity records, and that's deep and dark web, but also all the social exposures that all of us as we expose ourselves in social media and in Facebook, et cetera. So from the bad side of the AI, there's definitely in the last 2 years been a lot of use. I don't know at what level of technology of deep learning or neural networks, but there's definitely been automation in profiling targets. And just think about 96%, according to Verizon, 2018 report, 96% of the attacks come from the email as of today. All those scams, phishings, and tricks, and sexware, and all these situations where the human is the problem, the human factor is the problem. So we're seeing that. Obviously, all of you are seeing that. So this, all this data, that billions and billions of information that you can crunch, and you can get insights, and you can target very, very well, contextualize. You can know about this person, what is he, does he like, what is his. Even the way you write, they can fake the way you write, where you've been, who do you know. So I'll send some very contextualized messages to fool you ultimately. So that's on the side of. So we've definitely seen that. Part of that actually, I would say, is a little bit of this fake news situation that we've seen in this Cambridge Analytica. I don't know what technology they were using, but it's absolutely a bit of the same profiling targets to send. In this case, instead of malware, you send in messages, but it's just a little bit of the same. So on the side of protection, of the good side of that identity intelligence technology, so we've been able to do the same to protect and alert users. So we are able to detect that you've been exposed these ways, and this type of information is out, and this is the profile that a hacker could create from you. So you should know what is your surface of attack, and you should be aware and ready to learn that. But we're using that also, that technology, to track criminals. We are able to use billions of records to profile ourselves, those criminals, and try to go after them, hunt them, and connect the dots on that.
Great. And well, in the case of Devo, I understand you can use the platform and the technology both to sort of refine and improve an AI, as well as to deploy AI-based security. Can you tell us a little bit about the use cases that you have that you're putting in place in production with Devo?
Yeah, of course. So our approach to all these techniques is allow the customer to work better with his data. So one of the problems is that you need to build a model that you can use to profile your users or to detect kind of attacks or whatever. But after that, after creating the model, you need to evaluate that model against massive amount of data. And it's one of the things that we allow the customer. So The complexity is that you need very experts that will work with your data, understanding your data models, your technology, in his companies, his infrastructure, just to build those models over months. But after this model was created, what's next? How you can really extract the outcome of this data in every second in the life of your company. So it's a part that we allow how we allow the customer to use those techniques in one way. The second part is create this model and really know what works, what doesn't work with your data in your company. It's a hard work. It's a lot of time that some expert data science needs to spend just to compare patterns to define how they will work. And we also help the data science to do this job better, easier, and faster. So at the end, we are in the middle of the data science and the production model, analyzing all this data in real time. So we see all the time how our customer create models, what are the models that they put in place, what works, what didn't work, in terms of what they continue using those models, and after that, how much time they spend building those models to improve his security. So we are only in the part of the good guys, detecting attacks, detecting frauds, money laundering, all these kind of attacks, and as an enabler. In the other side of the question is, what's the models that really works? Because one of the things that we see in our customers is that the models that they use more often and for more time right now are still the basics models, talking about clustering, anomaly detection in temporal series, and starting with deep learning and AI. So there is a lot of hype about what the bad guys can do with AI or even the companies, but at the end, the basic model, we are more used to work with them. We understand better how they work and how to extract value on those models, and we see every day how they are starting to use the new techniques, but it's just starting.
One of the interesting things about AI and security is also how the security itself has evolved from what was passive defense, meaning protecting from the inside of your perimeter or network, to active defense, where you begin to intercept the attack, or even contemplating the offensive, basically going out and sort of getting your data back if somebody has taken it from you. In this context, AI, being autonomous or self-directed machines also, brings interesting considerations as to what's right, what's legal, etc. What's been, starting with Alex, your view of AI applied to either passive or active, or even more active or offensive, applications?
Yeah, I think the whole topic of hack back, active defense, offense is really yet to be figured out. It's really probably ultimately a matter of law and not in policy for democracies, and how countries sort of behave with each other and what is and isn't acceptable behavior. It's almost hard to talk about it. AI is simply yet another tool available that nation states now have, a very powerful one at that. But it's yet another tool that is out there, and it is and can be very disruptive. I think a couple things to consider when we've thought about it or seen companies come in and talk about it. Number one, most people don't know they've been hacked. So you start with, can I stop something that's going on or hack back? First thing you have to figure out is, do you even know what's going on? I'm sure everyone's seen the data on the dwell time of an average, even figuring out you've been hacked. Second, once you figure out you've been hacked, what's attribution is really, really difficult. People go through proxy servers. A lot of these attacks, even with the best capabilities of sort of the intelligence community, it's very difficult to pin down the exact attribution. And we've seen plenty of public use cases where There's speculation on which government did an attack, and the best intelligence communities in the world have a very difficult time sometimes pinning down attribution. If they can't do it, I think it gets very scary for companies and then let alone average sort of citizens to even think about it, or small businesses to think about if something's going on. Should they hack back? You start to figure out, you could hack back at the wrong person, and you quickly lead into a very chaotic situation. And that's why I think a lot of the ultimate sort of decisions there really aren't about AI or about cyber. The capabilities are there to do it. It's really a matter of almost public policy and nation-state level agreements on what is and isn't possible. The United States, as an example, just made our 10th military domain cyber, right? So we have all these military domains, and the United States military in the last 12 months has commissioned a cyber command. So it's a very real thing that's out there, and it's a little scary. And I think from the investing side and business side, I think we all need to be pretty careful with it.
Okay. What's your take on that, Vin?
Yeah, I think, like Alex mentioned, right, the capabilities are definitely there, right? We see a lot of it, especially coming from a Cisco perspective, customers typically turn to us as the first line of defense whenever they see or track some kind of hacking. Active, yes, definitely, right? There is a lot of ways you can actually think about, active defense versus passive defense. And I think there's also a lot of disruption happening in this, again, from a startup standpoint. Companies also trying to solve for this. But regulation there is going to be the ultimate driver. And I think if you think about also here in Europe, I find that the law is probably a little bit more stringent. But I think there needs to be a lot more modifications that need to be done on the regulation standpoint to be able to actually essentially protect yourself, right? So if you are an enterprise and you know that there is an active hack happening right now, is it okay for you to actually go beyond and basically counterattack to make sure that you are defending yourself? I think the law there is not very clearly defined now, especially when you go from country to country. In the EU, I think there isn't really any initiatives happening. I know in the US there's debate around this. EU hasn't really talked about this, or they haven't really considered a drafting law around this. But I think there definitely needs to be a lot more needs to be done on that front. Technologically, I think the capabilities are there. I think there is not a lack of technology solutions, to actually make sure that you actually go on the active defense.
The one thing I'd add, I think a really good area to sort of think about and invest in is sort of the simulation of someone attacking you. Understanding that mindset is, of course, the best way to get inside their brain is to do defense. And so red teaming and blue teaming, and penetration testing has been around for a while as a service. I think a whole new area that's burgeoning is sort of the same way we've automated QA testing and using more automation in software delivery. We can automate attack testing, and we can automate and simulate sorts of attacks that go on right now. And I think that's a whole area where there's some very interesting things going on. And I think it also goes to training and skills, improvement in skills for people on attack simulation, and the best way to sort of play defense. I think we have a lot of use of sort of offensive simulation and not actual offense in terms of trying to get businesses better at the simple use cases of stopping fraud, stopping credential hacks, and other things like that. So I think those are some interesting areas to invest in and some things going on now.
And for all of you, in the speaking about active defense or passive defense, is that the future? Or are you seeing actual revenue opportunities? In the short term, with are clients willing to pay and generate revenues for you in the active defense, or is it still in the traditional sort of passive defense?
So just to be clear, the active defense doesn't mean attacking. That would be offensive defense that we're talking. So I don't think in the US it's illegal. You cannot. It's absolutely by the Computer Fraud Act from, I think it's 86, you cannot attack anybody at all. And so there's this new law or bill that is not even passed, called ACDC, which is proposing active, and that doesn't mean that you can attack anybody. It means that you can attribute and disrupt. That means you can try to stop an attack under your infrastructure, but you cannot launch anything versus the. So I think that's the path, the way to go. I don't think there will be any legal. I don't think there will be in the future any legal framework to attack, at least in the U.S. and in the EU, maybe other countries, but to attack freely, or because how do you define attribution? How do you, this is because the law says under certainty of attribution, high certainty of, how do you find that? How do you measure that? Because for me it would be, so that's, I think that the active defense is the way to go, and it'll be what it makes all sense. No? You should use to protect yourself. And right now, so for us, it'll be a good business line, absolutely, because we're in the attribution business, and therefore we're betting on that. We are.
Do you guys see anyone a possibility for greater collaboration between governments, entities, et cetera? I mean, AI at the end of the day is also based on data, you know, and having more data. Is there, what are the limitations for improving AI by, you know, having, you know, organizations that, or better sharing of data?
If we really can build a model in which the companies and the government share just the trail of the attacks, we can build more accurate models to defend our companies. So any step that we can do to allow this sharing of information without privacy concerns or whatever can really make that any company can build models more accurate to really know what is happening when someone is trying to do against your company. But the reality is that this is not happening right now or very active. I came from a banking industry where we share some of the attacks, but in a way that really don't allow you to defend better your company, and I believe there is a good possibility. And talking about what you said about the active defense, I absolutely agree with Julio. At counterattack, well, to who you think is attacking you is not the way. But use an active defense, that means that you can defect, confuse the attacker, has a lot of good results, and really make that your company more safe. So there is a lot of techniques that the company actively use to do that, and it's a good business opportunity for the future. And as you said also, the append test is the perfect moment to understand what someone is trying to do, build the models, understand how your company works when you are in an attack, and improve your security.
Great. Are we out of time, or do we have time for questions? No, no time for questions. Sorry. Thank you very much to the panelists and to the audience. Okay.